Hillman sets a screen, rolls to the basket. Gray.
Welcome back to Clark USA fans. There are rare moments in sports when everything slows down, when the noise fades, and the truth stands right in front of everyone, undeniable, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. These are the moments when narratives collapse, when opinions get exposed, and when reality replaces hype. For Caitlin Clark, that moment didn't come in a perfectly scripted return or a headline-built comeback. It came after 8 long months of silence, injury, questions, and doubt, 8 months where people wondered if what they had seen before was still real, or just a flash of brilliance that time might erase. This wasn't just a comeback story. It wasn't just about stepping back onto a basketball court. It was about identity, about legacy, and about proving something not just to the world, but to the game itself. When Clark finally returned, stepping onto the court in Puerto Rico, coming off the bench for just 19 minutes, it felt like a quiet moment on paper. But what happened in those 19 minutes was anything but quiet. It was explosive. It was historic. It was a reminder. She didn't ease her way back. She didn't test the waters. She didn't look hesitant. Instead, she immediately took control of the game in a way that only a few players on the planet can. She shattered 5 FIBA records, dished out 12 assists in a single half without committing a single turnover, and dictated the pace of the game as if she had never left. It wasn't just impressive, it was surgical. Every pass had purpose. Every movement created something. Every decision elevated the players around her. And yet, when the game ended and the spotlight shifted to the podium, something unexpected happened. Clark didn't talk about revenge. She didn't talk about proving people wrong. She didn't even focus on the records. Instead, what she revealed was something deeper, a glimpse into who she really is beyond the stats, beyond the attention, beyond the expectations. Because this story isn't just about numbers or highlights. It's about influence. It's about presence. It's about what happens when a player changes the game without forcing it. But to truly understand what happened in Puerto Rico, you have to go back to the game before it, the matchup against Senegal. Because without that context, none of this makes sense. That game wasn't just her return. It was the test. 8 months away from competitive basketball is not a small gap. For many players, that kind of absence changes everything. Timing disappears. Confidence fades. Rhythm gets lost. Some players never come back the same. So when Clark stepped onto the floor, the questions were real. Would she still have that same burst? Would her vision still be elite? Would she still see passing lanes before they even formed? Would she be able to connect with completely new teammates? These weren't doubts created out of negativity. They were legitimate unknowns. And for a brief moment, the entire basketball world held its breath, waiting for answers. Then she checked into the game. And everything changed. The shift was immediate. You could feel it in the arena. The energy didn't just rise, it transformed. Fans wearing Iowa jerseys, Indiana jerseys, people from all over, it became clear that the crowd wasn't just there to watch Team USA. They were there to watch her.
The defense doesn't sleep. Williams with a steal.
And within minutes, it became obvious that the time away hadn't taken anything from her. If anything, she looked sharper. She brought the ball up the court and started reading defenses before they even had time to set up. It was like watching someone solve a puzzle before all the pieces were even on the table. She wasn't reacting, she was anticipating. She found teammates cutting into spaces they didn't even realize were open yet. Passes were delivered with precision, hitting players exactly where they needed to be, exactly when they needed it. Ryan Howard was getting easy looks, not because the defense broke down, but because Clark made it break down. Kiki Iriafen was scoring inside without having to create anything on her own. Monique Billings was finishing possessions effortlessly. It looked easy, but it wasn't. It was controlled chaos, orchestrated by one player who understood the game at a different level. That's what makes Clark special. She doesn't just play basketball, she reshapes it. The floor literally feels bigger when she's on it. Defenders are forced to stretch themselves thin, trying to account for her range, her ability to shoot from deep, her threat to drive, and her elite passing vision. The moment they commit to stopping one thing, everything else opens up. It's not just skill, it's gravity. At one point, Coach Kara Lawson put together a lineup with Clark running alongside Ryan Howard, Kelsey Plum, Kiki Iriafin, and Monique Billings. That unit didn't just perform well, it dominated. The ball moved faster. The spacing improved. The decision-making became sharper. It was fluid, connected, and efficient. Even Lawson herself admitted afterward that this lineup took the team to another level. And here's the part that makes it even more incredible. Clark wasn't even starting. She came off the bench. She played limited minutes. And she still controlled the game more than anyone else on the floor. Her plus-minus in those 19 minutes was plus 35. That's not just good, that's absurd. That's the kind of impact that doesn't happen by accident. What stood out the most, though, was how natural it all looked. There was no forcing the issue. No trying to prove a point. No visible pressure. She simply played her game. She pushed the pace when it was needed. She slowed things down when it made sense. She made the right read every single time. It was effortless, but only because of how advanced her understanding of the game is. Every player on the floor benefited from her presence. Howard didn't have to work as hard to get open. Plum found more space than usual. Iriafin had room to operate in the paint. Even players who weren't directly involved in the play were impacted because of how defenses had to adjust. That's the Clark effect. It's not just about scoring. It's not just about assists. It's about transformation. She changes the geometry of the court. She forces defenses into impossible decisions. She creates opportunities that didn't exist seconds earlier. And most importantly, she makes everyone around her better.
Clock to one, Lloyd. Oh yeah! To Lloyd!
So heading into the Puerto Rico game, the situation seemed simple. You had a player who just delivered one of the most efficient and impactful performances in recent memory. You had clear evidence of what worked. You had a lineup that thrived with her running the offense. And you had a global audience watching, expecting more of the same. The only real question was how the coaching staff would respond. Would they lean into what worked? Would they give her more control? Would they build the offense around her strengths? Or would they go in a different direction? The atmosphere in the arena was electric. Every seat was filled. Cameras followed Clark everywhere, from warm-ups to tip-off. The energy felt like a concert, like the moment before a major artist steps onto the stage. Everyone knew who they came to see. Everyone expected something special. And then the game started. But instead of building on what had just happened, something fell off. The flow disappeared. The rhythm was gone. The ball stopped moving the way it had before. The energy that once felt alive began to fade. Possessions became slower, more static, less connected. Clark, instead of being at the center of the offense, was often standing far from the ball awaiting. Watching. Ready, but not involved. Puerto Rico's defensive schemes played a role. They ran zone. They applied pressure. They tried to disrupt the rhythm. But the real issue wasn't the defense. It was the decisions being made on the offensive end. There were stretches where isolation basketball took over. Players holding onto the ball longer than necessary. Forcing shots instead of creating opportunities. Ignoring open passing lanes. And perhaps most noticeably, missing Clark when she was clearly available. There were moments where she stood wide open on the perimeter, feet set, hands ready, and the pass never came. Not once. Not twice. But repeatedly. It wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a pattern. And for fans watching, it was impossible to ignore. The same player who had just orchestrated one of the most efficient offensive performances was now being taken out of the equation, not by the opposing team, but by the flow of her own offense. The contrast was stark. In one game, she elevated everyone. In the next, she was being underutilized. And the difference in team performance reflected that shift. Because when Clark has the ball, the game changes. When she doesn't, everything becomes harder. And that's what made this moment so powerful, not just what she did, but what happened when she wasn't allowed to do it. Because sometimes, the truth in sports isn't revealed when everything goes right. Sometimes, it's revealed when it doesn't.
She can't believe it!
There are moments in basketball where the game itself tells the truth, no commentary needed, no debate required, no spin strong enough to hide what everyone can clearly see. And what unfolded in this stretch of the game wasn't just a bad sequence, it wasn't just a few missed reads, and it definitely wasn't random. It was a pattern. A clear, repeated, undeniable pattern that played out possession after possession, right in front of millions of viewers watching in real time. The objectively correct basketball play, over and over again, was simple: find Caitlin Clark. She was open. She was ready. She was positioned exactly where a playmaker of her caliber should be to either score or create something better. And yet, the ball didn't go to her. Not once in a crucial stretch. Not twice. But repeatedly, consistently, almost as if she had been removed from the offensive equation without anyone actually saying it out loud. And fans noticed immediately. This wasn't something that took hours of film breakdown or slow-motion analysis. Clips started flooding social media before the quarter had even ended. People weren't confused trying to figure out what they had just seen. They were furious because the situation was so obvious. This wasn't a case of a player missing a read in the chaos of a fast-paced game. This wasn't about timing or miscommunication. This was something else entirely. Something that felt deliberate, or at the very least, impossible to ignore. What made it even more frustrating was the contrast. Just one game earlier, against Senegal, the offense had looked like pure basketball poetry. The ball moved effortlessly. Players cut with purpose. Every possession felt alive, dynamic, and connected. And at the center of it all was Clark, orchestrating everything like a conductor, leading a perfectly synchronized performance. But now, against Puerto Rico, that rhythm was gone. Completely gone. Instead of quick ball movement and sharp decision-making, the offense slowed to a crawl. Possessions dragged on. The shot clock became an enemy instead of a guide. Players held onto the ball too long, dribbling in place while the defense reset comfortably. Passes that should have been made instantly were delayed or ignored altogether. And the result was an offense that looked stuck, 5 players on the floor, but not truly playing together. And where was Clark in all of this? Standing on the perimeter. Watching. Waiting. The same player who had just run the most efficient lineup on the team, who had generated 12 assists in a single half without turning the ball over, who had completely transformed the flow of the game, was now reduced to a spectator within her own offense. The difference was brutal to watch. In the Senegal game, the moment Clark brought the ball up the floor, everything came alive. The defense barely had time to get set before she was already making decisions, already creating opportunities. A quick screen, a perfectly timed pass, and suddenly Billings was finishing at the rim with ease. It was fast, it was sharp, and it was unstoppable. But against Puerto Rico, that same sense of urgency and creativity vanished. Instead, players caught the ball on the wing and held it. They hesitated. They waited. The shot clock ticked down as the offense stalled. The pace that made Clark so dangerous, the pace that forced defenses into impossible situations, was completely suffocated. And yet, every single time Clark did touch the ball, something positive happened. Every time. A quick kick-out pass that created space. A drive that forced the defense to collapse and drew a foul. A skip pass that shifted defenders out of position. It didn't matter how brief her involvement was, she made an impact instantly. It was like flipping a switch.
Of X Factor's Ariel Atkins off balance.
For a moment, the offense had life again. But those moments were too rare. Because whenever the offense ran without her controlling the tempo, it looked like a completely different team. Slower. Disconnected. Uncertain. It felt like 5 players running slightly different ideas, hoping something would work instead of executing a clear plan. And here's what made the entire situation even more frustrating. Clark wasn't disengaged. She wasn't standing around passively. She was still competing. On defense, she was active and aggressive. She recorded a block. She got a steal. She read a passing lane perfectly, intercepted the ball, and went coast to coast, finishing through contact for an and-one opportunity. Even while being overlooked on offense, she was making plays on both ends of the floor, doing everything she could to impact the game. The effort was there. The focus was there. The production was there. The opportunity was not. And the game film doesn't lie. You can go possession by possession, frame by frame, and the pattern becomes undeniable. When Clark touches the ball, the offense has a pulse. It breathes. It moves. It creates. But when she's standing off ball, watching as someone else dribbles into traffic or forces a contested shot, everything flatlines. That's not opinion. That's evidence. But what made this situation even more fascinating wasn't just what was happening on the court, it was how Clark responded to it. Because her reaction wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. And that's exactly what made it so powerful. If you've watched basketball long enough, you know how players usually react when they're being frozen out. Some get visibly frustrated. They start calling for the ball, waving their arms, demanding involvement. Others shut down completely, mentally checking out of the game. Clark didn't either. She stayed composed, focused, controlled. There was a moment when she checked back into the game where her body language said everything without her saying a single word. At one point, there was an opportunity to redirect a pass, a moment where eye contact or communication could have been made, but she didn't even look. No reaction. No acknowledgement. No forced smile. Nothing. She simply moved into position and continued playing. That wasn't accidental. That was intentional. That was a player who had seen enough and chose not to pretend otherwise. It was a level of emotional control that you don't often see, especially in a situation like this. It wasn't about making a scene. It wasn't about creating drama. It was about maintaining composure while everything around her felt out of sync. And then came the moment that sent the internet into a frenzy. During a stoppage in play, Clark came off the bench and started greeting her teammates, fist bumps, shoulder taps, encouraging gestures, keeping the energy up.
The last two games of this regular season is Citron takes and makes from deep.
It was a normal, positive interaction, the kind of thing you see on every team. Until it wasn't. As she moved down the line, one teammate passed by without any acknowledgement. No eye contact. No gesture. No interaction at all. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. Because in today's world, moments like that don't stay small. They spread. Fast. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere. Millions of views, endless discussions, debates, interpretations. People tried to analyze what it meant, whether it was intentional or just a coincidence. But when you place that moment alongside everything else that had already happened, the missed passes, the ignored opportunities, the lack of involvement, it started to feel like part of a bigger picture. A picture that fans were already beginning to piece together. But the story didn't end there. After the game, attention shifted to the sidelines, to the coaching staff, to the decisions being made, and to the responses that followed. A reporter asked a direct question about Clark, giving the head coach an opportunity to address what everyone had just witnessed. And the response? A refusal. Not a vague answer. Not a deflection. A complete refusal to engage with the question. Instead, the focus shifted to general statements about figuring things out and finding the right combinations. And under normal circumstances, that might make sense. But not here. Not after what Clark had just done the day before. Not after a performance that included record-breaking efficiency, elite playmaking, and complete control of the game. The facts were already there. She had already shown exactly what she could do. So when those facts weren't acknowledged, it didn't feel like uncertainty, it felt like avoidance. And then there was another layer to the situation, one sitting quietly on the bench, but impossible to ignore. An assistant coach with a direct connection to Clark's professional career. Someone whose coaching philosophy had already shaped how Clark was being used at the WNBA level. A system that emphasized off-ball movement, slower pace, and reduced control over the offense. A system that, throughout an entire season, had limited Clark's ability to fully dictate the game. And now, that same influence was present in this environment. At the same time Clark was being underutilized. At the same time the offense was struggling without her at the center. At the same time the contrast between what worked and what didn't was clearer than ever. When you put all of these elements together, you don't need speculation to see the issue. It's right there. Visible. Unavoidable. A player who has proven she can elevate an entire team. A system that doesn't fully embrace that strength. Decisions that don't align with the evidence on the court. And through all of it, Clark remained calm. No outbursts. No complaints. No headlines. After everything, the missed opportunities, the lack of involvement, the post-game silence, she stepped up to the microphone and handled it with composure. She didn't take shots at anyone. She didn't create controversy. She didn't give the media anything to turn into a conflict. And in today's sports world, especially in women's basketball where narratives can escalate quickly, that level of restraint is incredibly rare. Because sometimes, the loudest statement a player can make is saying nothing at all.
KT even put it in.
This is the kind of sports world we live in today, a world where narratives don't just follow the game, they often become the game. A single post-game quote can dominate headlines for days. One expression, one sentence, one subtle jab can ignite debates across every platform, from television to social media, from analysts to fans, from casual viewers to die-hard supporters. In this era, drama spreads faster than highlights, and rivalries are sometimes built as much in interviews as they are on the court. And when it comes to Caitlin Clark, that reality is amplified to an entirely different level. Because the moment she steps into a press room, it's not just a player speaking, it's a global spotlight waiting for something to explode. The Clark versus Angel Reese narrative alone has driven engagement at a level that most leagues struggle to reach over entire seasons. Every interaction is watched. Every look is analyzed. Every word is dissected. And Clark knows this. She understands exactly how powerful her voice is in that environment. She knows that one carefully chosen sentence, just one, could set the entire internet on fire in her favor. She had every opportunity to do it. Think about the situation she had just come out of. A game where she was clearly underutilized. A game where the offense struggled without her controlling it. A game where fans and analysts alike could see, in real time, that something wasn't working the way it should. She had the evidence. She had the justification. She had the full support of a massive audience ready to amplify anything she said. And she chose not to use it. Instead of leaning into the moment, instead of fueling the narrative, instead of even hinting at frustration, she did something that, in today's sports culture, feels almost rare. She talked about the team. That's it. No hidden messages. No subtle criticism. No coded language designed to let the media connect the dots and run with it. Just a calm, composed, team-first response from a player who had every reason in the world to take a different path. She described the offense as a little clunky, not broken, not frustrating, just clunky. She acknowledged Puerto Rico's defensive schemes, pointing out how their zone slowed the pace and disrupted the flow. She mentioned that the team needed to do a better job pushing in transition, emphasizing the importance of not letting defenses get set. She praised her teammates, highlighting strong performances and contributions. She even took time to recognize the opposing team, complimenting Puerto Rico's effort and the incredible energy of their crowd. And then she moved on. No drama. No tension. No controversy. Just basketball. And that matters more than most people realize. Because we've seen what happens when star players choose a different approach. We've seen how quickly situations can spiral when frustration spills into the public. We've seen players let emotions take over, turning a single moment into a prolonged distraction that affects not just themselves, but their entire team. We've seen situations where off-court narratives overshadow on-court performance, where locker rooms become divided.
Atlanta's first three of the game and does it with 1/10 of a
where focus shifts away from winning and toward managing internal conflict. Clark avoided all of that. At just 23 years old, in one of the most intense spotlight environments in modern basketball, she showed a level of composure and awareness that many veteran players still struggle to maintain. And it's not like she hasn't faced pressure before. Since the moment she entered the professional stage, she has been under constant scrutiny. Hard fouls, physical play, criticism from media and narratives, she has dealt with all of it. And yet, after a game where she was effectively taken out of the offensive flow, she sat at the podium and spoke about how the team would improve. That's leadership. That's maturity. That's discipline. And it became even more clear when she addressed one of the key questions from reporters, whether the team's struggles were caused by Puerto Rico's defense or by their own mistakes. She didn't hesitate. She said it was mostly self-inflicted. Think about that for a moment. She could have easily pointed to the defense. She could have credited Puerto Rico's strategy and physicality as the primary reason for the struggles. She could have shifted the focus outward, deflecting any responsibility away from her team. But she didn't. She took ownership. Not just for herself, but for the entire group. She talked about missed defensive coverages. She mentioned foul trouble limiting their ability to run in transition. She acknowledged areas where the team needed to improve. And then, once again, she gave credit to the opposing team and their fans before moving forward. No excuses. No blame. No agenda. Just accountability. And when you compare that approach to what we've seen from other players in similar situations, the difference becomes even more striking. In sports, when players feel overlooked or disrespected, the reaction is often immediate and visible. Frustration shows. Tension builds. Situations escalate. But Clark didn't follow that script. She rewrote it. While others on the court seemed focused on maintaining roles, protecting their position, or forcing their impact into the game, Clark remained focused on one thing: winning. Not her individual numbers. Not her playing time. Not how often she touched the ball. Winning. Even after being iced out offensively. Even after watching the flow of the game shift away from what had clearly worked. Even after sitting through a post-game environment where the focus seemed to avoid acknowledging what she had accomplished just a day earlier. She stayed consistent. She stayed professional.
Over 2K in her career. And a statement.
She stayed focused. And that contrast between her approach and everything happening around her is what defines this entire moment. Because while others were navigating their own priorities, Clark was thinking about the bigger picture. While others were reacting to the game, she was already looking ahead to what needed to happen next. And that's why this story doesn't end here. Because the performance in Puerto Rico wasn't just about one game. It was a glimpse into something larger, a preview of what this team could become if everything aligns. In just 19 minutes, Clark showed exactly what happens when she's trusted to run the offense. The pace improves. The spacing opens up. The entire system becomes more efficient. But now comes the real challenge. The next phase. The next test. Because the opponents ahead won't be as forgiving. They'll be more disciplined. Faster. More organized. They'll capitalize on every mistake, every hesitation, every breakdown in execution. And in that environment, decisions matter even more. How the team uses Clark. How the coaching staff structures the offense. How the players adjust and respond. All of it will determine what happens next. Because at this point, the question isn't whether Caitlin Clark can change a game. She already has. The question is whether the system around her is ready to fully embrace that reality. Will they give her the control she's already proven she can handle? Will they build around the strengths that make her unique? Or will she continue to prove her value piece by piece, assist by assist, moment by moment, under constant pressure and scrutiny? Because one thing is certain, the world is watching. Every pass, every decision, every second she spends on the court. It all matters. And if this team gets it right, if they truly unlock what she brings to the game, they don't just become better. They become unstoppable. But if they don't, then the lessons from Puerto Rico won't just fade away. They'll echo. And the opportunities missed might not come back. Because in the end, this isn't just about one player. It's about whether the game itself is ready for what she represents. And right now, that question is still unanswered.